Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, our monthly discussion for Eloqua professionals. My name is Richard Holder, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Forethought Marketing, and I will be your host today. As a reminder, today's session is being recorded, and you'll receive a replay link tomorrow via email. And if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. This will help us keep organized. Before we begin, I have one last-minute question that we wanted to share with you. We have an Eloqua user who's experiencing trouble with the SFTP export following the recent 24D release, and they are struggling to get a solution for it. So if you have worked through issues like this and would be willing to help them, they have contacted Oracle and is not receiving a prompt response. So they reached out to us to see if we could find someone to help them. So if you can, please get in touch with us and we will connect the two of you. All right, so today's office hours is going to be just a little bit different than we've done in different office hours. We thought with the holidays being here and everyone sharing wishes and gift ideas, why not do this for our Eloqua needs? And so we asked in the invitation for you to submit yours. We've also collected a few ideas that we've had over the years with our clients regarding enhancements I'd like to see to Eloqua, as well as cloud apps that could extend what's possible with Eloqua. All right, so, and I'm going to encourage you to use the chat to comment along as we're going here. So if you want to chime in on things that as I share these, feel free to do so. If you want to submit a new idea, please use the Q&A. It will help us keep organized. All right. So with that out of the way, let me get started with our first wish, and it is a big one. So annotations. I don't know about you, but one of the biggest challenges that I see in very complex campaigns and programs is struggling to decipher exactly how it's supposed to work, especially if it was built by someone else and you're just trying to work with it and understand it. So this is something that has been discussed many times. We would love the ability, not just for the entire canvas, but for each individual item on the canvas to be able to add notes there and to detail exactly why we made this decision and why this step is being processed. So I think that would be very helpful for a lot of people. And I'm curious what you think. Just go ahead and chime in the chat if you want to share something on that. And I'll take a peek. All right, so no comments there. All right, so the next one is no surprise. Improvements to the Redwood experience. So Redwood is an interesting improvement from Oracle. I can see the benefits and the commonality across their different applications and so forth, but the rollout has been a struggle for some people. For others, it's been quite simple. But I think everyone is looking for Redwood to, as this person described, and they submitted this question, to lessen the time to operational improvements. In other words, how can we make Redwood work as quickly as the old interface, or we can become familiar with the interface as quickly as we were with the old one? And on the positive side, I see the Oracle team working really hard to address those concerns. We know that there are areas where Eloqua features are not yet incorporated into Redwood, and they have the team working on that very diligently. There's also discussion about how things could be improved, where certain defaults, the choices today don't necessarily align with our practices. And so when you open up a particular section of Eloqua and Redwood comes up, we can influence perhaps some of the layout and so forth and what appears to make it more convenient for us. So I agree with this person's wish, and to see Redwood um, get up to speed. I'm looking over here at our questions. Let me see if we can. See, Louise is talking about folder structures being not in sync with the older version, and it's going to take some time to get familiar with that. And I completely agree with you, Louise, and thank you for that information. All right, so let's go on to the next one. If anyone has, again, anything to add to that, go ahead and, oh, chat is disabled. Let me make that. You'll just pause with me for one moment. Okay, I've enabled chat. I apologize for that. Chat is not something we do normally, so I forgot to do that. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So this is one that was actually discussed in the community recently as well. Someone wanted to copy account data or to the account custom object or a contact custom object. And yes, we use custom objects a lot. And one of the areas where you can't get information and move it over to another part of the program, at least not easily, without manual intervention, is this ability here to be able to copy data in a program or in the canvas. So I agree with this. There are many times when we update information on the account, and um, the information is received from a CRM on the account, and your particular setup might include moving some of that data over into custom objects in order to do additional processing. So that would be a um, great thing to be able to do. So I agree with that. Um, that's something we've actually explored here at Forethought Marketing, but we've not yet built something. We haven't had a client specifically ask for it and work with us to develop that, but we would certainly be open if that's a need for you. Okay, I'm just checking on chat to make sure everything is over here. Okay, all right. So let's go on to the next one. So automatic contact deduper and merge. Now, this is a fascinating one because we have developed a merge contacts cloud app that we sell. It is not automatic though, and I wanted to comment on this because in a perfect world, uh, when contacts were duplicates, or we found that a contact was duplicate, you'd love the system to be able to automatically take care of that. But as you know, data is messy sometimes, and there's not an easy way for a system to make that match and make a good decision. And if you merge and then delete the merged contact, that can be catastrophic. So you don't want to do that unless you have human oversight. So we do have an app that can merge contacts, and it will take all the activities of the old contact that you're going to merge and make them as external activities, so you can still preserve that contact history and activity history. Unfortunately, we can't put it in on the actual Eloqua activity, but that's just not possible through the API. So we're going to do external activities. But this app works great. It does allow you to quickly find two contacts, identify the fields you want to merge. It's got a nice graphical user interface that's going to allow you to move that information and then send it over. We've discussed with several clients how we might be able to automate this, but we always get to the point where it really needs a human in the loop in order for us to do this properly. So if you are interested in this, please get in touch with us. We'd love to talk with you. And even if you want to pursue getting it a little bit more automatic, we'd love to talk to you as well. All right. So the next one, before I go on with that, I'm just going to double check the questions here. All right. So the next one I have on here is email alerts if a segment contain contacts. Um, I was reading recently an article that was talking about how in our marketing automation systems, you uh, you sometimes create segments or lists that contain contacts that have information that shouldn't be there, or they have information and you expect it to be in one format or to have certain values and it doesn't. And so being able to identify a contact who is in a place where it shouldn't be because you've created that segment and that rule in order to do that, I think would be a great thing because that way you could do a little bit of automation in your system. And if that record appears, you could get an email, you could get alerted, and then you could take action on that. I'm curious, again, if anyone has had this kind of desire or need, go ahead and put that in the chat. And I'm just going to check, is the chat working for everyone? Because I don't see much out there. All right, let me continue on. All right. Here's another suggestion that has come in from one of the viewers. They wanted the ability to send an internal email on the campaign canvas when certain action takes place. And they wanted the ability to merge certain pieces of data on that contact record, but send it to another contact. This might be useful, for example, if you get a lead that comes in and you want to do a notification to the salesperson, even before you send it over to the CRM, give them a quick heads up. This would be an opportunity for you to get that over quickly if certain conditions were met. So yeah, this would be an interesting feature as well. I considered it many years ago in a different role, and I would love to have it, but it was just wasn't available. And I've seen a couple of people mention it, in the following years. Um, okay, let's move on from that one. Oops. Oh, I have two more that came in later, so let me put those up. I don't have, say, I have a slide for it. So the one that I've got here is a little ambiguous because they said they want improvements to the SMS features, but they don't have any specific suggestions for those. So yeah, that sounds interesting. I've seen the improvements that they've been adding to the system over the months and the different releases. Attending the release webinars, there seems to be quite a bit of effort being put in there and making sure that it meets everyone's needs. I know I, for one, really appreciate it when companies have tight integration with my phone because I usually have it with me. And if I can take a quick action or be alerted on something, that's a great way, to take action. And so incorporating that into your communication and your marketing strategy is a great feature. So while I don't know specifically what this person is looking for, that would be great to have that. All right. One more question, and again, this is another one that somebody submitted. So if you have a little bit more detail on what this particular suggestion is, please add it in the chat. But they are asking for a live code editor. I'm going to assume that that means maybe in the design editor, or maybe when you're editing in the old editor, that you can update the code in real time and see those reflected in real time, so you get a live preview and so forth. So, that would be interesting. That's probably pretty advanced, at least in my opinion. I'm no coder, I'm no developer, so often I talk to developers and I think, oh, this should be simple, and they go, no, that's not simple. It's going to be very complex. And then I think that something's going to be complex, and they say, no, that's pretty simple. So um, I'm going to check the chat to see if there's anything. Nope. Okay. I'm going to do one last call for questions, and I don't see any. So, all right. Well, this was rather quick. We're looking for many more suggestions, and this is what we received so far. We do appreciate those who did submit the ideas and their wishes for Eloqua. As a special thank for attending today, we have some swag for you in tomorrow's recording. It's going to send it to you, and you'll be able to redeem that. So, and also when you leave today, there'll be a survey where you can let us know how things are going with us and how we can improve these upcoming events. And we thank you for joining us today. Have a happy holidays, and we'll see you next year.